Hi, and welcome to the Creative Content Marketer Audio Editing Part 1. This week we're going to talk about basic audio editing. And I think with the popularity of podcasts becoming more prevalent in marketing, I think you'll find a lot more marketers developing more of a multimedia approach to their marketing. So audio editing and then eventually video editing to create multimedia projects, I think are going to become a lot more popular as time goes by and as the tools become a lot more consumer friendly. And you kind of seeing that with the previous webinars that we've had that focused on the photo editing. The tools are becoming a little bit more automated, becoming a little bit more consumer friendly. They're still a little bit more complex and still require time, but as the technology develops and as you see the tools become a lot simpler to use, I think you're going to see a lot more of what they call user-generated content. You're already seeing a lot of it in social media, and a lot of marketers are already taking advantage of that. So we're just going to kind of approach this in a simple step-by-step process. So some of the tools that are out there, and you'll see a lot of them, and you've probably heard about them. You have GarageBand on the Mac, and then on the Windows side, there are a couple of programs. One of the ones that I like to use is called Acid or Acid Pro. There's also Acid Music Producer, and they're basic audio, we'll call it music creation programs. So these tools are becoming a lot more fluid in terms of the interface. Really like to see these tools become even more simpler in their approach, because really for musicians, speaking as one, the more that the tool can get out of the way of the creativity and allow the ideas to kind of flow, then I think you're going to see a lot more better output from these programs. So one of the programs I'm going to kind of go through today is GarageBand, and it's on the Mac. And a lot of the operations are shared across platforms, whether it's on Mac and the iOS side, or Windows and the PC side, and also some of the mobile apps that are out there. They all have a similar approach, and they take their approach from kind of the granddaddy of programs, and you've probably heard this name before, Pro Tools. And it's the professional audio editing program that a lot of the musicians use in the studio. So let's jump right into it. And here we have GarageBand. As you can see, if you've ever seen an audio edit program, it's pretty simple. You have tracks, and just to go through the menu up here, you'll start a project, and then once the project is open, then you start adding tracks. And it's all considered what they call non-linear editing, which means, and also non-destructive editing, which means you can make edits, but they're not permanent. Just like you saw in some of the photo editing programs, you have an undo feature. Now here you have the basic layout. Over here is your track layout. So you have one track here. As you can see, we have the audio waveform. Down here, you can get a much more visual and up-close representation of the waveforms that are in the audio file. And then by audio files, you can use pretty much any accepted audio format. On the Mac side, they're usually labeled the AIFF file, AIFF. On the PC side, it's usually the .wav file, .wav. You can also use MP3s. So any audio file that you have, you can just drag into the track interface. It'll input it and create a new track. Now, if you wanted to do that, just showing you how to start a new track. With GarageBand, it'll ask you whether you want to use software instrument for instruments created by GarageBand. And if you see over here, you have all the, what they call loops, kind of categorized in this area. So if you went over here to piano, you have vibes, you have mallets, and then you have kind of what they characterize as moods, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But this one is really just going to focus on a single track. And as always, you can always record actual instruments into GarageBand. But again, we'll get into that at some of the later date. So again, let's just go, if I wanted to add a new track, let's just say software instrument. It adds a new track. And then I can actually, if I wanted to, copy that. And paste. And it just really depends on what you want to do with your tracks. But again, since we're just going to focus on one track for this session, I'll just kind of keep it simple. And you can always delete that track. Now for this project, I'm going to take a simple voiceover project that we did for our on-hold music. And we had one of our employees do a voiceover. And what he did is he just took a simple recording of his voice reading from a script and just read simple blurbs. Now, if you can see down here, you can stretch and shrink the length of it, depending on the editing that you need. Same thing up here. You can shrink and stretch it. And the longer that you can make it, the more detailed that you can get into the file. If you can see here, there's nothing going on within this space. So this space I really don't need. So if I hit play, you can see the cursor. Once I hit play, it'll start playing. And because I don't need this part, what I want to do is just cut this part out, really up to here.
Low-cost solutions often sacrifice functionality for price.
If you can hear that.
Others offering free options usually require external plugins to fully operate.
Let's turn it up a little bit more.
Low-cost solutions often sacrifice functionality for price. Others, offering free options, usually require external plugins to fully operate. Your best choice is a platform that's both affordable and designed to help instantly grow your business. BannerOS is that platform.
Okay, so that's the first blur that I had him record, but I really don't need this. So what we can do is cut that part out. Now, if you see up here, there's an option called split. And what that does is if you think of the old way of recording, when they used to use tape and reel to reel, they would have to take really a razor blade and actually splice or cut that piece of tape out. This is somewhat similar, although it's digital editing. So once it's spliced, you can actually undo it and go back. So if I hit this, you can see that it splices right where the cursor is at. And since I don't need this part and it's highlighted, all I have to do is hit delete and it's gone. Now let's say I didn't like where the splice came. I can always undo it and it's back together. That is the really nice thing about digital editing, is that it's not permanent. In the past, when you were splicing tape, once you made that splice, that was pretty much it. I mean, you could tape it back together, but it sometimes would not work that well. And if you put too many splices that you didn't like, then that tape became somewhat unusable. So since that's where I really liked the splice, let's go in, hit that, hit delete, and it's gone. So then what I can do is just move it right up to the beginning.
Low-cost solutions often sacrifice functionality for price. Others, offering free options, usually require external plugins to fully operate. Your best choice is a platform that's both affordable and designed to help instantly grow your business. BannerOS is that platform.
All right. And again, you see that there's space here. So you don't really need that space. And then if I move it forward again,
Your website's content.
oops, and then highlight it, there. I've spliced that section and taken that empty space out.
Dashboard gives you quick access to your website's content. With Dashboard, you
And as you can see, there's other spaces coming up. So again, highlight it, cut, highlight it, cut, delete. So then what that does is it allows me to take the pieces that I do want and move them either closer or farther apart based on the timing that I need for the recording. So let's say I'm doing this for a video and I want to create a soundtrack or a voiceover track, and I need to fit in the track within a certain period of time, usually 30 seconds to a minute. What I can do is I can take out all those spaces and then move the voiceover closer or farther apart, again, depending on the need. So if I keep going, all those spaces are taken apart. And if you can see up here in the ruler, if you go down to the panel, the play panel, you can see I have options to set the ruler based on what I need. So if I want to set time, I can say, okay, I need to get this certain amount of voiceover within 30 seconds. Now that I've taken out the empty spaces, I've been able to do that. Now let's say I don't need any of these options or any of these little cutouts or little audio files. I just do one more cut here. This is where I can actually use a separate track. And I can actually let's undo that. Real instrument track. Can actually take these and put them on separate tracks and actually change the order. Now, of course, if both tracks are activated, then you're going to hear
instantly grow your business.
kind of a mess of audio going on.
Gives you quick access to your website.
So then when I can go over here and actually mute the track, but still save these if I need them or want them at a later time. I can also go over here on this track and have the option of soloing the track. And this will come in handy if you're doing an actual musical recording. And we'll talk about that at a later date. But right now, I just want to mute that track and not use these right now.
Understand your potential customer shopping habits and their interests to improve business results. BannerOS tracks websites.
Now, if we get in a little closer with the track, you can see that it has the option to play with the volume and panning. Again, this really may not come into play, but if you're getting into, let's say, full multimedia projects, the option to be able to change the volume. And you see when I highlight that, I have the option of setting marks at certain points along the track. Let's say I wanted to fade down at one point and then fade back up. We just put a point there, put another point here, drag it down, and if I play that for you,
Fully operate. Your best choice is a platform that's both affordable and designed to help.
I pull it down all the way.
Require external plugins to fully operate.
And again, I can change the length of the fade.
Is to fully operate. Your best choice is a platform that's both affordable.
And if again I want to fade it back up,
Grow your business. BannerOS is that platform.
so we start over here.
No plugins to fully operate. Your best choice is a platform that's both affordable. Grow your business. BannerOS is that platform.
Again, it really depends. If you're doing multiple tracks and you want to fade in different voices, really depends on the project. Mostly you would probably use this at the end where you want to fade out. It can also become handy, and I'll show this as we get a little bit more into a multi-track recording where you can fade out different music elements that accompany your voiceover. And again, eventually, as I said, what this does is give you kind of the first step into creating soundtrack for videos. And if you're doing podcasts, you may want to do certain things where you're fading out and fading in, because you may do something along the lines of advertising included within your podcast, where you'll cut to commercial break as they do in radio, and you'll fade out your music or fade in your music as you introduce the upcoming commercial. And then as you're coming back from commercial, is fade back in with your voiceover. So it really depends on your creativity and how far you want to take your podcasts. Now you also have the option of doing track panning. Now what that does, and you probably can't tell this from the webinar, but it allows you to pan your music or a particular track either to the left or to the right, and you have varying degrees. Now this is a little bit more for if you're doing a musical composition. You really don't want to have all your instruments coming through a center position in the recording. So what you do is you pan, let's say if you're doing bass, drums, and guitar. Usually the drums are kind of centered. The guitar can go to, let's say, the right side. The bass can go to the left side. And then the vocals can be kind of off-center or centered with the drums. It really depends. And again, it's more of an audio mix technique. But again, it helps kind of clarify the music and helps certain parts stand out so they don't become cluttered all into one area of the music. Now, if you go back to track volume, you can always turn this off too. So then it's just one level, and you can change the level, again, depending on what you need. If one track is louder than another, you can always just bring down the whole track. And it usually starts at, if you hold it down and click on it, 0 dB or 0 decibels. So you can go up or you can go down. And then down here, you also have a master volume. And if you're really good, and again, it takes practice, you want to make sure that the recording is not going into the red. So if I play this for you,
Dashboard gives you quick access to your website's content.
you can see down here everything's in the green.
Activity.
But if I push the volume up,
access the most recently used
you can see it going into the red,
and add any updated web content to your
which causes clipping. And what clipping is if you're listening to a recording and you start hearing these clicks or pops, the volume has gotten too low and it becomes, the volume has become loud and it starts to become distorted. That's something that you don't want in your recording. So usually your recordings, and again, it depends on where you're getting your recordings. If you're inputting professional loop tracks, then those recordings are probably a little bit better recorded than, say, something recorded off your phone. Sometimes it really depends on the microphone that you're using. And let's talk a little bit about the microphones that you use. If you're doing something through, let's say, your iPhone or your Android, and you're recording this, what you want to try to do is use a professional mic. Now, there's a lot of options out there that you can look at that attach to your iPhone or your smartphone and allows you to kind of upgrade the microphone input. It gives you better quality and allows you to use that track without doing a lot of editing to make it sound a lot better. Now, you do have options in these editing programs to add effects, but the effects won't cover up any mistakes or distortion that you may have within the original audio file. So it's best, just like taking a picture, it's best to take a good picture with decent lighting and a decent camera rather than trying to bring it into an editing program and trying to make it better than what it is. So the more that you can start with a program or start with an original file that is of good quality, the less editing you'll have to do and the less time you'll have to spend on creating a file, a usable file from that. So, and again, the effects are nice. If I was to put something on it, podcasting, they have them all kind of worked out for you.
Low-cost solutions often sacrifice functionality.
Again, you can't really tell that. It kind of clarifies it. But you have kind of special effects if you wanted to do something like that.
Price. Others offering free options usually require external plugging. It's to fully operate. The best choice is a platform that's both affordable and designed to help instantly grow your business. BannerOS is that platform. Dashboard gives you quick access to your website's content.
And again, it can come in handy if you want to do a special effect. And really, again, it depends on the time that you have to spend on your project. So with that, this is just a basic introduction on how to do editing. The next session we'll get into a little bit more of an elaborate setup and how to do multi-track editing and adding music. So I hope this helps. We look forward to seeing you again.